At the beginning of the film, there is an old woman living with her ailing husband. Her husband's condition is very poor, and she alone takes care of him. One day, while the old woman is working in her room, she suddenly hears a noise. She goes to her husband and looks at him, and at the same time, she hears the sound of a wolf howling from outside, which scares her. Now, it seems that her anxious animals are running here and there. This is caused by an evil spirit that has entered her farm. Later, while the old woman is working in the kitchen, the chair behind her suddenly moves, which makes her realize that the spirit is around her. The next day, her two children, Louis and Michael, come to visit their mother. The way they speak to their mother shows that there is no good relationship between them, and they have neglected her. The old woman tells her children to leave the house, but doesn't mention the evil spirit to them. At night, the two of them sit outside and talk. They realize how busy they have been in their lives, and how they have neglected to show love and attention to their parents. At night, when Louis closes the door and comes inside, he notices that the door opens on its own. Only the old woman can see the evil spirit standing there. At that moment, she recalls telling her son, "There are many bad things in this house, you should leave." However, he ignores her words and goes to his room. Later, while she is working in the kitchen, the chair moves again, causing her to cry once more. She becomes even more tired, holding a knife in her hand. The next morning, when Louis and Michael go to the farm, they are shocked to find that their mother has passed away. Both are deeply saddened. They remove her body, and the police come to take it away. Then, both children sit quietly at their father's feet, overcome with grief. Meanwhile, their neighbor, who is also saddened by their mother's painful death, comes to their house, and a nurse arrives to take care of their father. She tells them that your mother used to mumble to herself, as if she were talking to someone. After hearing this, Louis thinks that he doesn't know how difficult it must have been for their parents. He regrets leaving them alone at that time. Now, because of this regret, he takes on the responsibility of taking care of his father. He then goes to his mother's room where she used to sew. Louis sees that she was making a gown for her wedding, which makes him even sadder. While Louis is taking a bath, he hears the sound of someone's footsteps in the bathroom. He calls out, asking, "Michael, are you here?" But there is no response from the front. So when Louis pulls back the curtain and looks, he finds his father standing there in a very strange condition. Louis gets very scared and starts shivering. Seeing this, Louis screams and closes his eyes. When Michael comes to check, he doesn't see anyone in the bathroom. When he checks in his father's room, he is sleeping on the bed in the same condition as before. It is hard to deny what Louis saw with his own eyes, but still, she ignores it and calms down. Now, Michael is about to go out to get some necessary things. Before leaving, he goes to check on his dad. Michael finds his mother's diary under the bed. He tells Louis about it, and both of them start reading the diary, in which their mother wrote about the drowning spirit. She mentioned that it was slowly destroying her husband, and she needed help. Hearing this, Louis starts crying. Now, the things written in the diary, they start connecting it with the events happening in the house, and neither of them can understand why their mother suddenly ended her life. To find the reason, they start reading the diary again, where their mother wrote that she could hear the voice of the spirit and feel its presence. They then go to the doctor who had been checking their mother's corpse. He gives them a cross and says, "I found this in your mother's pocket." Hearing this, both of them feel very strange because their mother was never so religious. After this, they return home, but their anxiety continues to grow. While Louis is taking care of his father at night, his father starts coughing, and a spider crawls out of his father's mouth. Louis tries to catch it, but Michael comes in and asks if everything is okay. Louis replies, "Yes, everything is fine." When Michael comes to his room to sleep, the light suddenly turns on. To check who is doing this, he sees his mother floating in the air, smiling at Michael. Then the light in Michael's room turns off, and his mother's voice starts coming from that room. When he looks outside, his mother is no longer there, but he realizes that she was there, in the same condition as if she were hanging. When Michael turns on the light, no one is there. Someone has made a mark on his face. She starts wiping her mouth. When she goes to check on her father, she finds lipstick. She is very disturbed. Meanwhile, someone calls at the house. When Louis picks up the phone, he hears a recording. When he picks up the phone again, he hears his mother's voice. When Michael comes back, he sees his father outside the house. He already knew about Louis and Michael. He tells them that his mother used to come to meet him, which is why he knows them. He gives them his number and tells them to contact him if they need help. Michael thinks that his mother might have done something, and that's why he asks him to leave. After he leaves, Michael calls his wife and kids and tells them that he misses them and wants to come to them. When Louis is reading his mother's diary, he hears the sound of glass breaking. Louis thinks that Michael might have broken something, but he notices the evil shadow. Louis thinks that his mother was right. He tells Michael he believes he was right. He tells Louis about the night when he saw his mother flying. When they came inside, they realized someone was outside. They saw their father outside, and looking into his eyes, they realized it was Michael. He could take anyone's form. Their neighbor calls to help Louis and Michael, but the neighbor is attacked because he wanted to help them. The soul comes to the neighbor's house in the form of Louis and starts cutting his body and face with a knife in front of him. As soon as the neighbor sees him, he understands that this is not the real Louis. Now the soul comes to the neighbor and whispers something in his ear. The next moment, the neighbor shoots and ends his life. In this way, the soul forces anyone to take their own life by hypnotizing them, just as it did with his mother before and now with the neighbor. The next morning, the two siblings go outside the house to check if there are any marks of their father's feet to find out whether he came last night, or if what they are thinking about the soul is true. They find nothing there. Now, due to the circumstances at home, both decide to send their father to the hospital. Louis calls his father to ask about his mother. The father then asks, "Where did you get my number from?" Louis replies, "You gave it yourself when you came to our house and said that you knew our mother and she used to come to meet you." Hearing this, the father is shocked. He says, "I have never met your mother, and I live in another country. I don't know any of you." Additionally, the father tells him, "I also had a daughter named Louis who took her own life. Coincidentally, her voice sounds a lot like yours." Hearing this, Louis becomes very nervous and quickly hangs up the phone because hearing everything made her head spin. Anyway, now both consult a doctor to send their father to the hospital. After examining the father, the doctor says that he is very weak and may not be able to bear the strain of the journey. If his life is at risk, it would be better to keep him inside the house. Now, the father's nurse says, "Your father needs your love, and I hope he will be fine like this. Because I saw your mother suffering without both of you." Now, when Louis and Michael go to the farm, they lose consciousness. There are many dead animals lying around, torn apart and eaten. Upon seeing this, they both realize that this cannot be done by any wolf. They start suspecting the soul. And now, they would light a big fire, throw all the animals in it, and burn them. Due to these circumstances, Michael becomes very emotional. When he talks to the pregnant animal, he says, "I won't let anything happen to you." And because he is emotional about his father and sister, he decides to stay with them. He also tells Louis, "I am now afraid of these things." After a while, Michael hears someone's voice coming from the farm. When he goes to check, the evil spirit appears in the form of his mother. She begins whispering something in Michael's ear, which was going to make him end his life with a knife, just like his neighbor and his mother. But then he stops with his strength. When Louis is sleeping with his father at night, she has a bad dream, in which she feels the evil spirit around her, which suddenly scares her. When she went to check, her father was not there. In fact, he was stuck to the roof, which made her very nervous. And now his eyes opened while screaming. This was also her bad dream. When morning came, Michael could not find him anywhere. He started looking for him everywhere. In fact, he had run away from his father and sister to save his life. Now Louis feels very bad about this. Then the neighbor's granddaughter comes to meet Louis. She tells Louis about her death and says that your father is listening. Hearing this, Louis understands that she is not the real neighbor's granddaughter. In fact, this time too, the spirit has changed and come to her. And she started bothering Louis. Ignoring her, Louis calls Michael. Meanwhile, the father's nurse also came here. The two sisters were arguing when the nurse started putting a sharp object in her cheek. Seeing this, Louis got scared. She went to stop her, but the nurse made her unconscious. Then she inserted a weapon into her nose and body in different parts and mercilessly took her life. When Michael came to his wife and children, he saw that he was completely broken as all the people in his family had died. So now Michael, being sad, cuts his throat and takes his life. But while dying, he saw that his family was alive. And all of this was the conspiracy of that spirit to end Michael's life as well. When Louis was with her father, he started coughing heavily. In the meantime, she hears Michael's voice from the house. At the same time, her father is also getting sick. Louis got very nervous. She tries to save her father, but he breathes his last after coughing heavily. While crying, Louis hears her mother's voice from the house. When she turns around to see her, the spirit comes out of her father and ends Louis's life too. That is, the entire family has fallen into the abyss of death. The reason behind this was that her mother had promised to hand over all their souls to Satan to complete her work. So the spirit stayed inside her father and settled in their house. Then it ended the entire family. Anyone who came into contact with it was also finished. And with this, the story of this film also ends here. Thank you for watching our movie recap. If you enjoyed it, please consider subscribing for more great content. Your support means a lot to us. Have a wonderful day.